All right, boys, we're going to do something different today. This isn't going to be a traditional live stream where I'm answering questions. I'm just going to talk. And what I want to do in this video is I want to break down the unfiltered truth about dialing in on TRT. And the reason that I want to do this and be really clear with you folks about it is because I see a lot of dudes in mental anguish from essentially just executing the wrong advice and making little mistakes, which end up being much bigger mistakes. Things like not waiting long enough, to change a protocol, not getting the bloods at the right time, not understanding, how the different esters work in terms of how long you have to wait to change. And let me just open up by making this statement. All right. If you don't know what you're doing, and in some cases, if you do know what you're doing, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to take you 2 years plus to dial in sexual function on TRT. I'll just make that statement. Okay. If you're hold on a second. If you're taking bad advice from the web, especially around the not manage estrogen thing, I'll have people that come to me that, it's been a year and a half, 2 years since they've dialed in. They haven't been able to dial in. And it's because they're watching YouTube and, the folks on YouTube are telling them, listen, estradiol is a hormone that we need, which is true. It converts from testosterone at a proportional rate, no matter how much testosterone you have. As long as you have a TDE ratio that, is in check, you should be fine. You shouldn't have erection problems or libido problems. Effectively just gaslighting you. And then people do that, they know it's complicated to take an AI and dial those in. Those are probably the hardest things to dial in. DHT derivatives are easier. And they'd rather not complicate their protocol. And they think that it can be, they think the fucking Easter Bunny exists. Okay. This is raw, unfiltered truth about what people end up getting themselves in mucked up situations, regarding the advice that's out there on the web. I think they can just pin 170, 150, 140 of test. They're doing it every day. E2's 45. They're like, what is wrong here? Maybe I have a dopamine problem. Still can't get an erection. Have no libido. Or it's there, but I can't get it up, so what's the point? Maybe I need to take some oxytocin. Maybe PT-141 for some hypothalamic dopamine release. Let me be clear. If you have a dialed-in TRT protocol that is DHT dominant, that's what every TRT protocol needs to be. Relative to the DHT estradiol axis, you will not need PT-141. You will not need Cialis. You will be naturally aroused and have a sex drive that is healthy and primal. And while engaging in, sex or foreplay and stuff leading up to sex, you will just automatically have an erection. And you will be interested in what you're seeing and feeling on your partner, girlfriend, wife, whoever. And it will all happen very naturally as it once did in your life. Everybody can remember, if you're on TRT and you're not dialed in, what it felt like for natural sex. It just happens. That's the mark of a properly dialed in TRT protocol. Switching to even if you know what you're doing. Even if you know what you're doing. To get estradiol around 20 to 30. To get DHT between 60 and 90 nanograms per deciliter. Sometimes it's difficult to even get there by making little mistakes. You jump on 115 milligrams of cypionate a week. I don't know, it's like 15 milligrams a day or 14 and a half milligrams a day, something like that. You got 100 IU of HCG. The numbers are pretty close to range, but still things aren't perfect. But it's only been 3 weeks, since you had reduced the dose to, from 140 down to 115, call it. A lot of folks would make the mistake of not even running estradiol then to see where it goes. But say you do, and it's still over and it's been 3 weeks and you think like, oh, well, all that cypionate that I had in the system from 140 must be out of the system. I've seen these cases where only 6 weeks later, 5 weeks later, the estrogen finally lands at 28 or 29 or something. And it's not a significant reduction from, call it 37 or 40, but it was just enough so that then the sexual system can breathe. When estradiol is too high, it's like you're trying to scream from a rooftop, but something is in the way muffling it. You know, like that stuff you see in the back, which insulates walls from sound and shit. It's just kind of blocking your ability to say something from a rooftop. That's what estradiol does to men on TRT. Your sexual function can be totally intact, but it will feel like you have fucking PFS. You know, or some other syndrome induced by a hair loss drug or an SSRI that causes sexual dysfunction because the estrogen's just blocking, you know, the androgen receptor activation, the endothelial function at the penile tissue, among other many other mechanisms. The base of the penis, the blood flow, the inflow gets inhibited by too much estradiol. So even if you know what you're doing, but you don't wait long enough in between changes, it's going to take you months to dial in or maybe more. And you'll be in the purgatory of never dialing in. Let me just explain to you, you know, what happened to me when I had shifted from, when I ultimately landed on the protocol that I'm at now, which is 5 pumps of cream a day, 3 on the forearm, 2 on the scrotum. This is 100 milligram cream where each click is 25 milligrams of cream. And then adding in a hybrid of cypionate. I had to try to dial this in 3 or 4 different frequencies of the cypionate. It was a 40 milligram injection of cypionate. I had ran it every 5 days, and things were pretty good most of the 7-day period, but there was a period where it wasn't quite great. Like erection's still good for penetrative sex, libido's still there, but not like firing on all fucking cylinders. I waited an additional 2 weeks to see if that got better. I didn't automatically change something because I've been through this 100 times. I've been through this thousands of times with clients. You got to wait. It ended up being a little better, and then I had to make an adjustment. I adjusted it further out to every 8 or 9 days or something like 9 days. And then things were yet better, but still not exactly like perfect 7 days of the week where I could just like, you know, I'm horny all the fucking time and wood every night. And I eventually got it to every 7 days, and that's the sweet spot for 40 milligrams of cypionate. But I was patient and I waited. His erections worked for penetrative sex regardless. Libido was there most of the time. I wanted to wait. You know, you have to wait. I get guys in client work that they're coming from a long ester at a high dose, so the estrogen's at 70 or 50. And, you know, after a month and a half of reducing the dose or moving to cream, because of the way that they're clearing estradiol, and because potentially the first protocol may actually have them slightly over on estradiol, the estrogen is not in the range. And people get very, very impatient and start thinking, you know what? I physically felt better on high dose prop. You know, I literally a PFS guy that, you know, God bless his soul, but like ruined his chances of getting better. Because after about 2 months, when we were really fucking close, those complex sexual dysfunction syndromes take 3 months or more to resolve. That's just it. And then the guy went back to 60 milligrams of prop every other day. He'll never dial in. And we were up on time, and I'm like, this is not the decision I would have made. You know, remember, I go through this all the time, and I've seen all these cases for years upon years upon years upon years. I know what we have to do. You just have to have the patience for it. So don't jump ship. Don't jump ship quite yet, especially if the numbers are trending in the right direction. If estradiol is trending down, you already have sexual dysfunction. So just give it the fucking time. You know, long esters, man, sometimes 6 to 8 weeks after you make a change, is when the outcome ultimately happens. And, the estrogen can finally settle where it is and your body gets used to that, therefore, then. And then you get all the sexual function back. But because you wanted to, switch to prop, or you wanted to, do some bolus injection of 100 milligrams in between to see if, all these ideas. Don't be the fucking idea guy. I have laid out a very clear framework on this channel for how this all works. In video after video after video after video. Yes, it's piecemeal, and you'll have to watch certain videos and go and try to understand them and watch other videos and put it all together. That's why I create products. That's why at any moment, you can go to livecortex.com and get the synthesized information that you need from any of our products. You can hire me for coaching, and this way you don't have to figure out any of the information. We'll just dial you in. You can get the source list to get some stuff yourself to go at it alone. If you're on cream, just get Mastering Testosterone Cream. That teaches you all this stuff. Mastering Testosterone Cypionate. It teaches you all this stuff. Or again, go with coaching if you don't want to piecemeal it through the content. But I have put all this information out there. Patience, patience, patience. While aiming for high DHT in the 60 to 90 nanograms per deciliter range and estradiol between 20 and 35. When you're embarking on the endeavor to resolve sexual dysfunction on TRT, you have got to be fucking patient. You've got to be. You're already in a place where erections are piss poor and libido is not there. I know you're rushing to get that resolved, but you got to have patience. You've got to have patience, and don't make quick changes, especially in the direction of adding an AI or bumping up the dose after 3 weeks, just because things aren't right. You got to analyze, dude, and you got to run the bloods, and you got to think and keep things the same. See how things change, monitor. Okay? Again, you already have sexual dysfunction. I understand you can't date and all that shit, I understand. It happened to me when I was on cycle. And I had to bring in an AI, slowly work through the process of dialing that in and getting libido and erections back on 500 milligrams of fucking test. I had a guy come to me many months back for 1 month. This is why I removed the 1 month coaching program, because 1 month is rarely enough time. It was always advertised as, hey, we'll get you on track. I will explain to you what you need to do. We'll start protocols. We'll put them on the web. I'll give you action steps after this protocol, depending on where estradiol goes, on how to continue and move forward to dial in. It's a very valuable service. But some folks were coming on board with the skewed notion that with estradiol at fucking 70, that in 1 month they're going to dial in. That's not how it works. The only way to get that estradiol down and to dial in within a month, if you're at 70 estradiol, is to not inject for 2 weeks and go through what will ultimately feel like hypogonadism. You're going to feel like dog shit. But there, you will get the estradiol down, and then you can build upon there. So if you want to go through that, go for it. There you can actually dial in. But I had a guy, after 3 weeks, we had got the estradiol down to 53. We made an intelligent move to dose a long ester at a low dose, 20 milligrams prop, and then get that estrogen down. Then we needed to go run labs, because I don't know how this guy's blood is going to respond. You don't know how your blood is going to respond unless you're hyper tracking it. And you know the patterns. Then it would have just been a matter of reducing the dose slightly, maybe reducing the HCG dose. You're just trying to dial in those numbers and then seeing if you still have enough DHT after that. And if not, potentially a hybrid, little bit of scrotal cream or something. You're just manipulating the numbers is all. But this guy, after 3 weeks, what ultimately was a month, was impatient with the process, didn't want to rebook again. Probably a budget issue, ultimately. I mean, the people that hire me understand that the sexual function that they have may take 3 to 6 months to resolve. That's just the bottom line. But, some folks will get, incredibly impatient and want to jump ship and do other things. And that guy's still on his own trying to figure it out. You got impatient. There is a process. I've dealt with other people who, after a month and a half or 2 months or something, still having some degree of ED, although things are better. And it's because of choices they made. I'll ultimately try to tell people, you should be on cream. I can see you're over aromatizing, under reducing to DHT. You should definitely be on cream. It's the way to resolve that. We'll dial that in rather quickly, but they want to stay on enanthate. Okay. All right, sure. Then after 2 months, it's like they start getting hopeless. Is this ever going to get fixed? Well, you probably should have gone on cream like I suggested you do. So it's also about knowing what you might have to do. Cream is one of the best modalities. I think it's hands down the best modality for TRT for men. Doesn't mean, adding a little bit of cypionate on top of that won't be fruitful, because hybrids with cream base and cypionate are fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. But if on cypionate, this is another thing that prevents people from dialing in. You are on a modest dose, call it 130, aromatizing to 55 estradiol, and DHT is at 40. Fucking throw your cypionate away. That's the cypionate doing that. Boys, I have seen that stuff. This is why I'm just not a fan of it. I know it works for some people. I can dial it in myself. I can dial other people with it. But for some folks, man, I have seen these skewed DHT estrogen ratios where you got DHT at 40, estradiol higher at 55 on a 130 dose, doing daily injections, every other day injections, every third day injections. It really doesn't matter. Cream is the solution in those cases. In so many cases. Think about it. The golden rule of TRT is have estrogen between 20 and 35 and DHT between 60 and 90. I mean, that's basically it, with functional testicles and some DHEA support, 20 milligrams a day. You do not need to go higher than that. Don't ever go higher than that. Then you run the risk of over-aromatization, because it can do that. Cream is the best way to reach that, because you want a higher ratio of DHT to E2. There's just no other ester that's going to do that. So please keep that in mind. What may take you 6 months or more to dial in is you're using cypionate, trying to, you're on Reddit and you're going, well, maybe if I just inject every day sub-Q, that'll work. You realize you're over aromatizing on the shit, and you have to dose it 150 or above to get enough DHT. So you try bringing in a Arimidex. And the suggestions for Arimidex out there are largely wrong. Largely wrong. You got to dose that shit once a week. Not every 3.5 days. Half-life is 2 days, sure. It's still inhibiting aromatase at day 5, though, just at a fraction less. So people don't factor that in, and they fucking never dial in. Never dial in. In the end, this channel and this stuff that I have put out is geared toward giving you, I feel like I'm over here looking at the truth and seeing it over and over and over again. And I'm a pretty good pattern recognizer. And then there are folks out there that are giving advice that do not reflect the truth that I have seen. Not on myself. Of course it all applies to me too, because it applies to all of us. But to fucking literally everybody that I deal with. And, a good degree of the reason that people are having a hard time dialing in out there, sexual function specifically, is just because the info on the web is bad. I don't know if I actually have this here, this graphic. I might have it. Let me see. Yep. That's basically the breakdown, But picture that truth section of the pie being smaller. This is a sobering moment. Okay? I want you really to look at this graph. Look at this graph. All right. This is truly what represents the information out there on the web about dialing in TRT. You got the information on Reddit. These are guys that are not dialed in. It's a help forum. Ryan Root, said this perfectly. It's a fucking help forum, dude. It's filled with dudes who aren't dialed in. Why would you take their advice? It's another thing to try, maybe. We'll try that. Try what Joe Blow 42 on Reddit says to do. The other forums, there's Excel Mail. There's a lot of bullshit on that forum too. There's a lot of intelligent people on that forum. Guy that runs it's a cool guy, smart guy, but he can't control all the posts and what people say. There's a lot of BS on that forum, man. YouTube should actually be somewhat of a bigger slice of the pie, and then the truth should be a small little fraction. But just to give you an illustration, call me crazy or maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but besides Vigorous Steve and Dave Lee at least focuses on DHT, I don't even see anyone saying the shit that I'm seeing. I think we're going to, as my content continues to permeate, everybody's just going to get on board with what I'm doing, because they're going to execute that with their patients and their clients, and they're going to all get dialed in and be like, yeah, Ryan was right. The Cortex Labs guy was right. He's been preaching about it for so long. Why is he so fucking passionate? People think I'm like instigative. I'm not. I just want people to know what I'm seeing. I want people to not waste time. If I figure something out, the world needs to know. Look at this graph, man. That's why it takes a long time. That's a big reason why it takes a long ass time to dial in. Not every ester is going to be right for you. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a guy that can't dial in on cream alone with HCG or a cream cypionate hybrid, right? That's easy. That's the easiest thing to dial in. But, test prop, very attractive, fast acting, dopamine hit. You feel great on that shit. But for some people, it's just going to be hard to dial in because of how quick it fluctuates, right? You don't want to be super steady state, but you do not want to be two extremes within a 24-hour period. 1,200, 1,300 total tests, then 144 total tests on trough. That can happen on prop sometimes. And, the good dose range, 15 to 25 milligrams, people respond variably to prop. At 25 milligrams, some people are at 2,000 total tests, which is absurd to me. But some people respond that way. That's just how their system is dealing with it. That's another thing. People's systems deal with TRT differently. It's just, if anyone tells you, oh, well, this is how this ester works, it's a 7-day half-life and it should be in and out and you should feel stable throughout the week. It's like, yeah, dude, don't listen to them. You have to figure out how your body responds to cypionate, how your body responds to prop. If you're at 25 milligrams of prop a day, but you're over in everything and you reduce it to 12 milligrams a day, and you end up being at 25 estradiol, but your trough is like hypogonadal, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So some esters just aren't right for people. Again, you'd be hard pressed to find someone that can't dial in on cream or cream and cypionate as a hybrid. But, prop isn't going to work for everybody. It will take strategic surgical dialing in, and there aren't many people capable of instructing you how to do that. There's me. I don't really know if Vigor Steve does coaching on TRT anymore. He's mostly doing anabolic steroids and other stuff. There's just not many people out there that can help. And the clinics, forget it. A lot of them don't even have prop anymore. The pharmacies. Anyway, you must be patient. You must be patient. It is not the case that you can inject willy-nilly testosterone and that testosterone is just going to give you erections and libido. Testosterone really doesn't even do that. It doesn't. DHT being high and estrogen being in range does. The DHT estradiol axis, which I will break down very thoroughly in the new sexual function playbook for TRT, which is launching probably late next week. The most comprehensive product we've ever created. I don't know if I have an image of it. Yeah, that's going to be launching max 2 weeks. But again, it's protocol heavy. It's logic heavy. There are decision trees in this thing that are insane. That are so descriptive. The long ester decision tree. You guys should see that. I can't wait to show it to you. It's going to be insane. Graphics like this, using cypionate and enanthate to dial in sexual function. what to do on the lower doses if DHT is still not high. You've got an estrogen in range, then what? Small doses of cream, hybrid protocols. I can't wait to show you guys this product. It's going to be fucking awesome. But it's going to have it in all of these distinctions so that you don't waste time. You don't have to waste time. You don't have to waste time. Be careful with the information that you are consuming on the web. Recognize that there is absolutely positively no proof anywhere. There are no conclusive, convincing set of papers in the medical journals that suggest in any fucking way that men on androgen replacement therapy don't need to manage estradiol. If you could just think about it simply, the folks that say estrogen, doesn't really need to be even tested. There are some popular clinics doing this. When I heard it, I was like, it's got to be a joke. They don't want you to test it? What? That's the most important thing to be testing. What was I saying? There are people out there just where in the literature does it suggest that estrogen doesn't need to be managed for men on TRT? Actually, if you look at the scientific journals, it says the polar opposite. You got the serum cut off at 32 picograms per milliliter, above which you're more likely to have erectile dysfunction. You got the papers where you feed rats synthetic estradiol and they grow fucking excessive lactotropes in their pituitary. Then they have super overrange prolactin. Estrogen receptor alpha and its negative effect on penile tissues. It's all in the scientific literature. The argument for keeping estrogen in range is in the literature. The argument for never managing it and never testing it is nowhere in any medical journal ever. Anywhere. It's nowhere. Show it to me. And if there's some cherry-picked bullshit, I will break it apart. I'll break it apart. It's nowhere. How did we get to the point where, as men who are androgen driven, androgen dominant is what makes us who we are, man. It's what gives us our characteristics that are distinctly different than women. How are we at the point where people think it's okay for estrogen to be over range or to be high? Dude, the disastrous blood pressure, hematocrit, which estrogen drives too, by the way, and full-blown numbness and ED, erectile dysfunction, that I've seen with men on fucking androgens from listening to the don't manage estrogen advice is obscene. Obscene. For complex sexual dysfunction, okay, this is why, there's 6-month advanced TRT coaching, for the really, really complex stuff that has responded to essentially nothing. That's why there's the 6-month option. Those of you that have had libido and erection issues for a very long time, look at the 6-month option. For complex stuff, you may need a host of different things to intervene to get that under control. Not just the right TRT protocol, although that's 90% of it, but you might need to be running 10 milligrams Cialis a day. Right? I mean, the literature shows us very clearly that PDE5 inhibitors over time aid in restoring erectile function. They can't do it by themselves. But over time, they fix the penile vasculature. Blood flow and oxygen does that. In rare cases, you might need to penis pump or use something like the Phoenix, which is like shockwave therapy to the penis, to break up and do some angiogenesis. Penis pumping for oxygenating the blood, essentially replacing nocturnal erections. Those are what keep you healthy. Again, it's estrogen, not being managed. It's not focusing on DHT and having low estrogen. It's changing things too quickly, not having the patience, the foresight, just not knowing how this all works. This is the stuff that makes it so that people have, a really, really hard time dialing in. If you know, I'll end on saying this. If you truly know what you're doing and you're looking at your bloods and you know how to get to get DHT up there in estrogen and range, and you know how to do it, it should take you about a month and a half if you're using a fast-acting ester to dial in. Yeah, maybe less. I mean, if you're super surgical with it, 3 to 4 weeks. Long ester, about 2 months. About 2 months. That's if you're doing it perfectly and you just know what the hell you're doing. So be patient, boys. Take the advice of this channel. Again, I know you have to piecemeal it and go through, a lot of different videos, but this is why I've synthesized all this stuff in product on the web. If you got to dial in on cream, which, I mean, honestly, you could skip the BS and just go to cream. Get the Mastering Testosterone Cream course. Yep, go get it. There's a 20% discount on every product. It shows up on the website as a pop-up, and there it is. Just enter your email address. Yes, we have your email address, and we will send discounts to you in the future. But in response, in exchange, you get 20% off the product. Go get it. Go get it. For Cypionate, I laid out all the protocols for Cypionate that work in Mastering Testosterone Cypionate. All this is here. If you don't want to go at it alone, which I understand, I mean, there are things for my businesses over the years regarding marketing that I was like, hell no. I'm not going to try to figure this out. I'm going to hire the Google Ads expert. And we figured it out. Yeah, that was for a web company of mine, and it was super profitable because I thought to myself, why am I wasting my fucking time? Let me just pay the expert who's been doing it for a decade, and he'll settle it. That company was doing $10K profit a month. A one single man company. It was amazing. Anyway, don't go at it alone. If you have the budget, let's just get on board with the program. This is the most popular recently. This is an ongoing coaching. Some people don't need the long coaching cycles. Just need protocols generated. 30-minute fact-finding call, 3 to 5 action routes, TRT protocol tracker. You're on your way. But, some people do want and need adjustments, right? Ongoing support where throughout the week, every week, we're communicating. I'm looking at your numbers. I'm looking at your protocol. I'm listening to your feedback. I'm marking it all down. Everything's being tracked. We're making adjustments to finely tune your sexual system so that erections are stellar, libido is stellar, sensation is stellar, and climax is awesome. Finely tuning. It's not an art. I want to be clear with people, A lot of artsy advice out there on the web. If you ever hear anyone giving you artsy-like advice around TRT and sexual function, fucking turn them off. It is a science. It's a science. For the pesky stuff that hasn't responded to anything that's been long-standing, especially go with 6 months. We're on the fact-finding call as soon as the next day, and we hit the ground running and start. All right, boys. This wasn't about answering questions. So if you got some of you guys ask questions and stuff, sorry. We will do an actual live stream tomorrow. We're doing Q&A. I just really wanted to get this information out there today. Because, again, I mean, I see a lot of suffering. People coming to me suffering, man. Just not able to dial in. And it's because of these mistakes. It's because of those mistakes. If you just had the right framework, you would cut your time to dial in half. And you dial it in. All right. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow, sometime 10 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern time. Here in Pittsburgh, we're about to get a foot of snow, so everyone's freaking the fuck out. So, I think it's like Saturday night into Sunday or whatever. So it'll be a little sketchy. So I've got to prepare for that today. Salt for the driveways and all that shit. So I've got to get to that. Otherwise, kick ass, rock on. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Take heed to my advice. I hope this has made sense. And have a great one. Later.